Hari was unhappy that he would not attend the wedding of his friend yesterday. So there's the question right in front of us, and we'll have to identify which of those parts have the error. So in the context again, it's extremely important for us to understand meaning. Here we're talking about this person, was not able to attend his friend's wedding, right? It's more of a what meaning is this context bringing? I mean, it's not a very impossible task, right? Maybe he just missed it for whatever reason, right? So here it's bringing out the meaning of him being able to attend the wedding or not. That's about it, right? We're talking about an ability, right? Whether he was able to attend it or not. So Hari was unhappy that he would not attend the wedding of his friend. And just by me explaining, saying, the context is bringing out the meaning of ability, immediately what comes to your mind? The meaning that the context is talking about is ability. So as soon as I say that, the concept that should come to your mind is about modals, right? Modal verbs. Because modal verbs express ability, certainty, something that should be done, right? Like it's the right thing to do, right? So having said that, where do you think the error is? Obviously, the only modal that is there is in part B, would, right? And we all know that would is the past tense of will. And I know will as a modal expresses the meaning of certainty, which means here I don't need the meaning of certainty. The meaning that I need in the context is ability. So what should I replace would with? Which modal brings out the meaning of ability? I need to replace would with could. Hari was unhappy that he could not attend the wedding and not would not attend the wedding, right? So obviously this is an error pertaining to modal. Would is the past tense of will, and the meaning that would expresses is certainty, or when you're bringing in a hypothetical condition, and that's not the case here. So the error is in part B. We replace would with could. Yeah, are you following? I told you that he ought to come today. I told you that he ought to come today. What's the meaning of ought to? Ought to is another modal, right? When somebody says you ought to do this, right? You ought to take daily tests in order for you to practice time, right? Practice or scale or master time management. You ought to take tests. So what do I mean by that? When I say you ought to do something, I'm saying it's something that you have to do, right? It's the right thing to do. It's the way to go, right? You ought to have done this. You should have done this. Almost brings in the same meaning of it's the right thing to do. So in the context, is that the meaning that we need? Look at the meaning that the context is saying. I told you that he ought to come today. I told you. If I have to say that in Telugu, it'll be like, Nen cheppen kada, he'll come, right? I actually gave the answer. Or, na sonnella. So when that expression, I told you, is an expression, right? Is the clue for us. I told you that he, do I need ought to meaning? Or what meaning do I need? Ought to means we just said, compulsory, okay, I'll take that. Or have to do it, right? Or should do it because it's the right thing to do, right? So, but the context, what meaning do I need? It's almost like this person was very sure, right? It's almost like this person was very sure that this person is going to come today, which means the meaning, context meaning is what? Certainty, right? So if the context meaning is certainty, what modal expresses certainty meaning? I told you that he, we just saw in the previous question. I told you that he would come today, right? Or he will come today. We just saw, right? In the previous question, remember we saw certainty meaning is will, Yeah, so I told you, so you replace. So again, the error is in part B, where you replace ought to with I told you that he would come today, right? I told you that he would come today. Are you guys following? So, which means the trick is for us to know the meaning that each modal expresses in a context. First, I need to understand what the context meaning is and then see, hey, is this the right modal in this context? Yeah? I will contact you when you will come. I will contact you when you will come. Is there an error in this context? There is. Will as a modal is repeated in this context, right? It comes in part A as well as part B. Well, that definitely is unnecessary. Either you can say, I will contact you. You have to have I will there, right? Because again, will is bringing what is the context meaning here? I will contact you. Surely, certainty. Don't worry about it. I will do this, right? It's almost like promising them. I'm saying this, I will do this, right? So, will as a modal is correct in part A, but I don't need that will repeated again in part B, right? It's unnecessary. I will contact you when you come. When you come, I will contact you. Even if I, kind of move the phrases around, I don't need will there in the second part, right? When you come, I will contact you. Yeah. So just like how when we looked at prepositions, we saw there are only three types of errors pertaining to prepositions. Either an incorrect preposition, or a missing preposition, or an unnecessary preposition. And the same applies to conjunctions as well. And the same can apply to modals as well, right? So the first two example sentences that we saw, they were incorrect modals because it was not in line with the meaning of the context. This one is an unnecessary modal. I don't need this modal here. So the error is in part B, I will contact you when you come, right? That's it. That's where the error is, not in A, because you need will there, because the context meaning is certainly I will contact you. Don't worry, surely I will contact you. I'm promising you I will contact you, right? So all we have to do is delete will here in part B. Be careful lest the sickness may take a bad shape. Be careful lest the sickness may take a bad shape. Where do you think the error is? So the clue here for us, the clue word is the word lest. Okay, are you familiar with this word? Maybe some of you don't know the meaning of this word, right? When you say something is lest, you're referring to, in order to prevent any possibility that something will happen. Let me just put that down here, right? So let's look at an example sentences. If I say, so what do I mean by this? So I'm saying they were afraid to complain about the noise lest they annoyed the neighbors. So they didn't want to annoy the neighbors. In order to prevent that, right, in order to prevent the possibility of annoying the neighbors, they were afraid to complain. They did not complain, basically, right? So you understand the meaning of lest, right? So in the context again, be careful lest the sickness may take a bad shape. Be careful lest the sickness may take a bad shape. Meaning, like, take care so that, you can prevent the possibility of you or the sickness becoming worse. Are you following? So in the context, if at all you have to change anything, what will you change? Let's look at another context. I can say, Das worried lest she should be late, right? Again, lest comes here. So in order to prevent the possibility of this person, that there's a possibility of this person coming late, Das was worried, right? But if you look at the construction, lest is usually followed by the modal should or no modal at all, right? If at all, if there's a modal that follows lest, it will always be should and not may to might, Anil, right? So that's why I put another example of lest so that you understand the construction. Mostly lest is followed by should. But if you ask me technically, no modal should follow lest because that itself completes the meaning. I don't need a should. In fact, if you ask me, I would say should is an unnecessary modal there because lest brings out the required meaning, and I don't need a should there again. This is my, opinion, but you will come across constructions where lest is followed by should as well, and that's accepted, right? It's grammatically correct, right? It's just that if I have to have a discussion with you, I would root for lest appearing as it is and nothing following, but you know how English is and how grammar is and how things keep changing, right? So maybe down the line, lest will not follow should, who knows? Okay, but for now, I'm just saying both the constructions are acceptable, where lest appears as it is in our first example, or lest is followed by should, but not any other modal. So which means obviously the error is in part C, where I remove may, right? And I can add a should. Be careful lest the sickness should take a bad shape. I can either do that as per my second construction right here, or I can just say be careful lest the sickness takes a bad shape, right? If I'm not using any modal, obviously we're talking about a singular subject, so I need a singular verb, so take becomes takes. Yeah? So either ways the error is in part C. Following? So far we've looked at incorrect modals, we've looked at an unnecessary modal. In this example, we've looked at clue words in terms of construction, right? So in certain constructions, what modal should follow? What is the right modal? Or do we need a modal at all? Right? That's what we looked at in the fourth one. He proposes that the government will hold an inquiry. He proposes that the government will hold an inquiry. Where do you think the error is? Is there a clue word in the context that is helping us? Why do you want to change will to should? Any clue word in the context? Okay. Yes, proposes, right? That's our clue word. Very right. So when I'm proposing something, which means I'm offering a suggestion, right? When I'm offering a suggestion, which means I'm asking people to consider it. So if I'm asking people to consider my suggestion, how can I use will, which is a modal that expresses surety or certainty? Incorrect, right? So I'm saying, hey, he proposes that the government should, right? I believe when you're offering something, when you're giving a suggestion or an advice, you believe that it is the right thing to do, right? So which means I need a modal which expresses what is the right thing to do. You should pay your taxes. You should follow traffic rules. You should help the needy, right? So what's the right thing to do? So that's the meaning that the context is bringing in. Proposes being our clue word. Obviously, I can't have will as a modal. So the error, yes, is in part C, no doubt. You replace will with should, right? Just to look at another example sentence where we have propose followed by should. So I can say they proposed that political strikes should be made illegal. Yeah, just so we understand the context, right? So when you're proposing something, not necessarily that every time you have propose it will be followed by should. Propose can come as it is without a modal following, just like lest, right? But if at all I have to use a modal, should would be the right modal, right? So in the last example for modals, what we saw is there are clue words in the context which can help us identify again if this is the right modal or not, right? So there are context clues that we keep applying, right? Context clues is a great strategy or a tip, not just for fill in the blanks or close passage, even for spot the error, right? That's the beauty of all these little concepts that we need to master. So I also wanted to highlight something with respect to what other clue words do we have in order to get the right modal, right? Propose is one, but I also wanted to share another tip, something that is extremely important. I think you should know this. Let me just put it down here. So when do I have this should, right? Followed, propose is not the only word. Another word is suggest, bringing in the same meaning, right? So I could say his wife suggested that he should start a bakery, right? And if you notice, the constructions, just for you to understand construction wise, okay, this is a small tip. Proposed that or suggested that, this entire phrase, if you take, usually should is the one that follows phrases like this, right? That clauses. Proposed that, suggested that. So when you have proposed that, suggested that, you can close your eyes and know that the modal that has to follow these sort of phrases is only should. Yeah, that's something that you can keep in mind. And this is especially in writing, because obviously people are not grammatically accurate when they speak, right? So very formal writing, I would say. Yeah, so proposed that, should. Suggested that, should. That's the only modal.